Hi, guys. Welcome. I hope you're having a good Friday. I obviously am not here today, but I still wanted to have a chance to present this particular lesson to you rather than just having you do some reading because I think it's a pretty important one. It's not just that you're going to see information about this on your upcoming test, of course, it's that these are things that you should be aware of. What we're going to get into today is different ways that you could organize a business, also mergers. Now, the business organization part, I think, could come up for some of you guys because it's very likely that many of you will at some point own your own business, or even if it's a small thing, even if it's a side gig, it can come up maybe more often than you think that you might be doing your own thing at some point. And so I want to give you some kind of basics on that. And then the part about mergers, that's just more about kind of being an informed citizen and knowing how some kind of mergers maybe limit competition, maybe affect you. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start by looking at how one could perhaps start a business. So, as I said before, you guys have a pretty good chance, many of you in the room, of doing something. There was a recent poll, actually, of students between grades 5 and 12, and 40% of them said that they intended to run their own business. And actually, of those students, 24% of them were already starting a business. And I do have it usually every semester. I've got somebody who already is doing something. Oh, I designed these clothes, or I, sell this thing. So if you were going to start a business, I'm actually going to click out of here for a second and switch over to the Secretary of State website so that you can see what you do. So you decide to start your own business. So for tax purposes, for liability purposes, you would need to declare what kind of business you're going to have. And one of the first things you do, if you look here, you've got 3 top popular services and topics. This one right here, business startup information. And lo and behold, come on, business startup information. It's thinking about it. One of the first things it does, it says select a business structure. They use the term structure. We use the term organization. Same diff. And right here, the top 3 are sole proprietorships, general partnerships, and corporations. And so we're going to tell you what those are and the pros and cons of the different ones today, so that if this comes up for you, well, you know what these are. Now, if you keep scrolling down, you see there are kind of different flavors on some of these. We're not going to get into the nuance. That is probably too much information. We're just going to give you kind of the top 3 and the things that you need to know. So first off, let's talk some vocabulary. The first one is liability. To be liable for something is to be responsible for it, right? So there are 2 different kinds of liability situations when you're starting a business. The first is unlimited liability. This means that you are completely and solely responsible for all the debts of a business, all the losses, all the issues. This comes up with sole proprietorships, which we're going to talk about, and this also applies to partnerships. Now, limited liability is when you don't face responsibility for the company's debt. And this comes up with corporations, where really the only thing you're going to lose if the corporation doesn't do well is whatever you invested in it. So liability is an important piece. Liability is a big deal as you start to maybe own things, or your business really starts to grow. Then you are going to want to look at protecting yourself so that you are not personally liable, personally responsible for the business's debts or issues. Some other vocabulary I want to talk about is some stock market vocabulary. We're going to get into these terms a lot more in Unit 4. This is just something that we wanted to introduce you to right now because we are talking about corporations, and corporations, many of which are publicly traded. So the difference between a stock and a bond, you see I have stocks and bonds here. A stock is actually when you own a piece of a corporation. So you own a small piece. If you buy a share of Disney stock, you own a little piece of Disney. Versus a bond. A bond is when you lend money to a corporation and they agree to pay you back with interest. And it's kind of a set thing. So stock has a higher earning potential. You take more risk. A bond, you kind of know what you're getting. And it tends to be a pretty safe investment if it's a solid company. Dividends, this one's second one here, dividends, that's another way that you can make money from stocks. If you notice here, the root word is divide. So what happens is the corporation takes a portion of their profits and they divide it up among the shareholders, among people who own stock. And so you get a certain portion of the profit. So many people, especially if they're looking to get regular income from stocks, look for stocks that pay dividends. And finally, interest. We've talked about interest. That's a payment made for the use of borrowed money. So when you purchase a bond, that corporation is paying you back with interest. So just so we know that as we get into the different kinds of business organizations. So let's pause for a minute and do a vocab check.